Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April edition of the APPA Agora. Very excited to introduce our featured guest, Anders Lindseth, and allow me please to read briefly his introduction, and then we will get started. Anders is a Norway Professor Emeritus for Practical Philosophy at the Center for Practical Knowledge, Norway University. He's been teacher of philosophy at the universities of Oslo and Tromsø and professor at the Department for Healthcare Research, Faculty of Medicine, University of Tromsø. He has been guest professor for practical knowledge at the School of Design and Crafts, Faculty of Fine, Applied and Performing Arts, Gothenburg University. After retirement, he moved to Munich, where he is living with his German wife. 2 sons have left home. In Munich, he has been teaching ethics and philosophy of education at Hochschule for Philosophie. Since 1971, Lindseth is a meditation teacher at the Norwegian Acem-School of Meditation, and now he is teaching meditation at Münchner Volkshochschule. In 1989, Lindseth opened a philosophical practice in Tromsø and is now offering such practice in Munich. He has been a member of the board of the International Society for Philosophical Practice and is now a member of the scientific board. Since 2017, he is teaching philosophical practice at Vienna University. Since 1997, he has been participating as a practical philosopher at the annual international meetings on the treatment of psychosis. In March 2019, he became honorary member of the Cuban Psychiatric Society. Well, that's quite a list of accomplishments, Anders. Welcome, and thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
It's great pleasure to see you. You're in Munich at the moment, are you?
Yes, I am in Munich.
So I hardly know where to start. I mean, you've had such and are having such an interesting career, but we first met 30 years ago at the first international in Vancouver, yes?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, 94.
94, you gave us a paper and a workshop, and we've been meeting at internationals ever since, and airport lounges and all kinds of places, but we've hardly had a chance to sit down and speak. So I hope to ask you some questions, and then I'll open the mic, and we have some very interesting practitioners in the house who probably will want to speak with you as well. Okay, so we'll divide our time like that. So first, I always ask this of our guests. Please tell us how you got started in philosophy. What initially drew you into the philosophical world?
I was decided already at high school that I wanted to study philosophy. I finished the Norwegian high school gymnasium, as we call it. As we called it then, I have to say everything is changing, you know. So as I finished high school in Norway in '65, I had possibilities to study many things. I could study medicine or theoretical physics or such, but I was decided to study philosophy and become a philosopher, you could say. So, and I can't say why. I think I had this interest quite early. I also realized at high school that when I went into topics of philosophy, my teachers were rather impressed. That may have reinforced a little the motivation.
So what was your original work in philosophy when you were a graduate student and so forth? What was your first area of research?
Well, I did write a thesis about the philosophy of science of Karl Popper. But my way into philosophy was Spinoza, because as I came to Oslo in 67, it was around Professor Arne Næss a group of people interested in working on it with Spinoza. And I came in there, and I did for half a year only read Spinoza's Ethics, and it was very hard. I understood at the beginning very little, but then I understood something and became very fascinated by that. So I went from step to step of fascination, and I used to tell a little story. I think you have to know something about Spinoza to find that funny. But as I came back home in the summer of 65, now 60, 67, no, it must have been, it doesn't matter. I think it was 66. I went to my cabin in northern Norway that I still have, and I'm going up there this summer also to visit my cabin. And one morning I came out and I saw this wonderful tree before the cabin. And then I was astonished, and I said to myself, oh, that is a modification of the substance. But you have to have studied Spinoza to find that funny. What I really meant by that was the feeling that it was something, what do you say, that is a problem with this conversation, that I have to speak English. It would be easier if I could speak German. I mean, Norwegian is my mother tongue, but I'm living in Germany, and when I'm living in Germany, I also use some time to come into the English. But if I had been in England or in USA for a couple of days, it would be easier. But
next time we'll bring you to New York for a few days to get you attuned. But honestly, Americans are in awe of this general European ability to handle 3, 4, or 5 languages. So, I mean, it's very impressive. And if you did speak, I've already butchered the Norwegian and the German words in your introduction. If you spoke either of those tongues, you would be comfortable, but none of us would understand you. So please, please bear with us, okay? And you're well believing in any language, but especially if we can understand you. Now, you told me once upon a time that it was not only Spinoza who influenced you, but also this philosopher, Logstrup, yes, and his work on ethics. How did you encounter him?
Who did you say?
You once upon a time I asked you who your influences were, aside from Spinoza and
Logstrup.
But
Logstrup, the Danish philosopher.
Yeah? So
yes, that's right. You had the book.
Yeah, I bought the book after you told me about him, but I'm sure some of our audience doesn't know him.
Yeah, it was. I got a scholarship to go to Germany, and that's how I became aware of philosophical practice, and I visited Achenbach in Bergisch Gladbach and so on. And then I came back home and I got a position at the University of Tromsø. It's the northernmost university of the world. It is now called the Arctic University. And there I was by the philosophers, but then I got a position at the medical department. And at the medical department, I came to a section for nursing science, and there I had to teach ethics for these students who wanted to be nursing teachers and maybe even take PhD and so on. So and that's what that was. And then I became aware of the ethics of the Danish philosopher Logstrup. And I realized, oh, that is something I could really teach. That would be more interesting for me than teaching these these usual topics of medical ethics and so on. So that was
But he's a
how
lot
I
more
came into it.
challenging. I mean, he's a phenomenologist and much more challenging than usual textbooks on medical ethics, surely.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. He's he's the ethical demand that you had there. He says that he makes clear that an ethics. He was a theologist at University of Aarhus in Denmark, but he made it very clear that ethics should be founded on purely human basis. If you say I'm a good human being because I'm a Christ, that would be no good argument. He said it would be hypocrite, and I didn't learn to know Løgstrup because he died 81, but I learned to know his wife, the widow of his. And she told me once that Løgstrup had said in a debate, no, there is no Christian ethics. I know that because I'm a professor of it, or for it, or what do you say? Yeah.
So let's go back to Germany. Did you go there specifically to meet Achenbach, or had you heard of his work at that point? Or what?
Yeah, I am a little more back in connection with Achenbach because he was the president of the Gesellschaft für Philosophische Praxis, the Society for Philosophical Practice that is started to call itself international, as you know. And but as he went out of that, he founded his own more regional society in Bergisch Gladbach. And then he asked me for 2 years if I could come in and become his vice president. So I was happy to say that. So I did see him on Zoom, in fact, a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
And in
great.
January I visited him.
How is he doing?
Oh, he's doing as always, maybe not so uh, intensively, but it is admirably intensive.
Yes, we
Also
saw him.
now he is giving.
Yeah, he was in Mexico
Hmm?
in 2018 for the ICPP
Yeah,
there.
he was in Mexico.
Yeah, before the
Mm.
pandemic, and he looked fine. He gave a talk. It was really wonderful. So, how did you become a philosophical counselor, though? That's a step from being a professor, you obviously into the practical domain, the practice domain. So,
Yeah,
how did that occur?
as I heard about Achenbach in, I think it was 85 in Dubrovnik in what was then Yugoslavia, now it's Croatia. And there is a inter-university center, and I visited it, and then I met a guy from Germany and told me there is a person in Germany. He has started a practice where he's meeting people and talk to people without being a therapist, but being a philosopher. And that was for me very sympathetic at once. I had for a long time from the beginning, maybe that such things you can't really explain, but I was convinced that philosophy has to be useful for ordinary people. And the big philosophers have always been concerned with human experiences, not uh, not with texts that only philosophy students would read.
So, you've been seeing people now, it's like 40 years at least, or more or less 40 years that you've been practicing in Norway and in
Yeah,
Germany.
I opened my philosophical practice in Tromsø at this Arctic University as I came back there in '89. So I have been I've had my practice since '89. And Yeah, I always, yeah, that must be right. 89, 87. My children were born. Yeah, yes, exactly. Then
So
I
it's
was back
35
in
years.
Tromsø, 89.
And you work dialogically, right? I mean, you're always in dialogue with people. Is that your main way to work with them?
Well, also philosophical practice is dialogical, of course. But I also I'm still teaching. I have I retired in 2013 at the University of Bodø up in north where I come from. But I still have one doctoral student left, and I hope she will finish this summer. And I have been I'm going on the May 24 to Copenhagen to be in the commission for a doctoral for a PhD exam or what you call it, and I'm judging, being in committees to find out if people can go from associate professor to full professor and such things. I'm still doing that, and I have also a course for doctoral students in Bodø in the winter time with two colleagues of mine in philosophy of science.
Oh, so you still
I'm
maintain that interest. That's from back when you were a Popperian,
when I was
when you were interested in Popper.
oh yeah, of course, as I'm just now writing a paper in Norwegian this time, because the university publisher in Norway want to to publish a book with my papers, and I thought I should write an original paper for that book. So I'm trying to write a critique of modernity, and then I also have a part about Popper as a typical philosophy of science for in modernity, you could say.
Sure. Well, The Open Society and Its Enemies is a very, very well-known book,
Yeah,
aside from the
yeah,
logic of scientific discovery. I knew him.
yeah.
I met him in London when I
Ah,
was,
yeah,
yes, I had a great opportunity to meet him as a graduate student. He was quite elderly then and mostly retired, but he was still giving talks.
yeah.
Really interesting character, as you well know. So what about meditation? You now have this involvement and you've had it for some time. Could you tell us about what kind of meditation you're doing? Does it have a
I
particular
have
school or style?
practicing meditation for 56 years. As I came to Oslo in 67, I heard a lecture on meditation, and then I started in February 68, and I had a very steep career and became a meditation teacher in 71. And that is a Norwegian school of meditation. But in the very beginning, as I started, we were a part of this transcendental meditation movement around this Indian Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. But yeah, what should I say? We were skipped out of that movement, you could say. So, it was a reason for that, because we did find it too metaphysical and too hard to believe. I became a meditation teacher at the time where we still had this connection to Maharishi, and I became a teacher on a course on a hotel out of season on Mallorca, and it was 600 Americans there, enthusiastic, and 50 Europeans less enthusiastic. So, and I think if I had not had this school in Norway behind me, I had stepped out of it. But because we had a less religious, a less metaphysical metaphysical approach. And I'm still doing meditation. I find it very useful, more than useful. It is, so to speak, also this dimension of silence that you come into when you meditate for a long time, and you take part in retreats and so on, and you come into this realm of silence where the thoughts are not overwhelming you, and it's a very, for me, very important experience. And I'm also quite sure, so it's absolutely sure that this experience is important, is decisive for the way I'm thinking philosophy. Although I don't talk so often about it, and I don't write so often about it either, but maybe I will do it in the coming years that I still have until I really realize what is about this silence.
So you keep it on the side of your philosophical practice. It's something you do daily, and you've done it for 50
I do it daily, and it is on the side of my philosophical practice. Yes.
Do you
And
ever?
we have a group of meditators here in Munich. We met yesterday in my practice. I'm now sitting in my practice. So here we met yesterday and had a common meditation for 1.5 hours. And we do that once a month.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So,
That's great.
yeah,
We have Rick Rapetti's with us. I'm sure he's going to join the conversation because he's been working on meditation as philosophical practice and the philosophy of meditation. So I'm sure he'll want to jump in at some point. Do you ever suggest it to your clients as an alternative or as an adjunct to dialogue?
Sometimes I mention it, but not always. As I mean, I don't mix these areas, you could say, but it is not secret what I'm doing. So yeah.
So you've been teaching in the Vienna School as well.
Yeah, in the University of Vienna, they have education in philosophical practice, Universitätslehrgang philosophischer Praxis.
So, and what do you teach?
What do you teach? Donato Romizzi is leading that.
Mm-hmm. It's a master's program, I think, isn't it? It's a master's program,
yeah,
correct?
It may be. I'm not quite sure, but I think it is something like. And I am the next time I will be teaching in January 25.
And what do you teach in Vienna when you're at that school?
Yeah, I had the first years I had. It was about self. So what is the self understanding? And but the last time but it will be the same in January. I have practical exercises. I first demonstrate how I do it, and then the people are practicing themselves, and we talk about it. And at the university it is quite theoretical. So I try to bring in the practice. And that is what is wished also, what Donata asked me to do.
Yes.
But it is quite short. In Germany, we have this also this education. We call it Bildungsgang, philosophische Praxis. And a couple of weeks ago, we had from Wednesday to Sunday practical exercises. We have four philosophical practitioners talking to people, and they were talking together, and so it was very intensive practicing.
Yes, it sounds like a master class basically to give people some guidance in the way that they actually practice with others. Yes.
Mm.
That sort of thing. Yeah, it's a very important. I had the impression that the Viennese school was highly theoretical and they were trying to scientize this. So that's why I asked you, because I know you're very practical as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think they have to do it theoretically because of the university. This-
So
you
one,
know what you do in Germany is not connected to a university
right,
outside.
right. Still to this day, I'm aware of that. We have many philosophical practitioners in the States who have become chairs of their department or heads, as you would say, heads of department, provosts, university presidents in one case. They're philosophical practitioners. Even they are not able to establish philosophical practice inside the academy. Yeah, we can teach courses in it, but there is still no sense of a graduate program in this country, which is
No,
very
yeah.
sad because
Mm.
it's quite badly needed. And I think the same would be true of Germany, yeah?
Yeah, it is. And I think you have in Italy at some universities.
Oh, they
I
have
think I
schools.
think Donata she is Italian, you know, and she is teaching also there, and
Yes,
I have met some Italians.
yes, Patricia could tell us, but they have every city in in Italy virtually has a scuola, you know, for or more than one for philosophical practice. It's become hugely popular, and there are many practitioners there. It's very interesting as we look from country to country and see the way that it grows. Fascinating.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would like to ask you another couple of questions before we open the mic, if you don't mind. You have been working
yeah,
with people also in psychiatric contexts,
yeah,
patients with psychiatry.
yeah.
Could you explain the role of philosophy as you see it in that kind of a situation?
Okay. I had a colleague at University of Tromsø who was he died in 2007 too early, but he had just been pensioned. His name was Tom Andersen, Tom Anderson, and he was a quite famous social psychiatrist and family therapist. And as I came in Tromsø to the medical department, I had my office not so far away from his office. And once people from Sweden came to the university to visit the university, and they wanted to visit my department and where I was, and also to visit Tom Andersen, who was a star in Sweden. He never became a star in Norway. He became a star everywhere else, but not in Norway. He did write a book that was translated in many languages, but not you can't get it in Norwegian. You have to read it in Danish or in Swedish if you are a Norwegian. And I met him, and we did things together, and we liked it, and we became slowly what I would yeah friends in the way. And Tom Anderson, he started a network for teams working with psychosis. A first episode psychosis was at the beginning the topic in '96. Um, And I became a part of that network from '97. And Tom wanted to have me there as a philosopher, as a philosophical, what do you say, advisor or something like that. So, and I really like to do that because I had a good connection to Tom Anderson, and we were collaborating very well, and it when topics came up, then Tom Anderson talked to me and said, Anders, now you have to stand up and say something philosophical about this topic. And then I did do that. I stood up and said something philosophical. So that was why I started to call myself a stand up philosopher. And after some years, an Englishman who was professor in the States somewhere, his name was Schotter, John Schotter. He met Tom Anderson and was very fascinated the work of Tom Anderson, this method that Tom developed that he called reflecting processes. And then John Schotter came also into this network. So then we were two stand-up philosophers. Yeah, and we had different background, but we understood each other very, very well.
But were you
I'm
working
sorry
with people who actually had psychotic episodes?
if I have met people.
Yeah, were you
Did you ask?
working with psychiatric patients?
No, I have not worked with patients. I have met people who have had that, of course, but not acutely. I have collaborated with systemic therapists. They were the systemic kind of therapists, and I have collaborated with them, but not with actual treatment of psychosis. Tom Anderson, and he was not the only one who founded this network. It was also a Finnish guy whose name is Jaakko Seikkula. And Jaakko Seikkula developed a way of meeting psychiatric patients that he did call open dialogue. And open dialogue have become some popularity, you could say. So I still have contact with Jaakko Seikkula, and I was in this network meeting end of August when it usually take place. The last was in Rome, and it should be in London this year. And Jaakko says he want to have me there. And I also have another guy who got a position in Havana, and he brought me to Havana. And then I met the psychiatry in Havana and talked to them about Løgstrup first. And they did find the ethics of Løgstrup very interesting. And I think I was 7 times in Havana, and the last time I became an honorary member of the Cuban Psychiatric Society.
Congratulations.
So I have a diploma. I can put up.
I believe you, Anders. I have no doubt, but I'm astonished. Now, which language were you speaking in Havana? Did you acquire Spanish?
Yeah, the first times I was speaking English and it was translated into Spanish. I sorry, I can't speak Spanish. I'm very sorry for that. But the last time I did speak German because the translator from German was better than the translator from English. So that suited me very well, but because I also speak better German than English.
That's fantastic. I was going to say, I'm going to say it anyway, that, we thought Castro, when he was alive, had already sent all the psychiatric cases to the United States with the Marielitos, if you remember that episode, where they released prisoners and inmates of psychiatric institutions, and they put them on boats and they sent them from the port of Mariel to Florida to give them sanctuary in the United States. But these were some very difficult populations who we basically absorbed. I don't think there was much choice, but they were called Marielitos. So what was your impression of Cuba?
I don't know anything about that.
Well, you don't need to know, I guess.
Yeah, the psychiatric people I met in Havana were very nice people. I really loved to be there, and they were very interested in this. Also, Jaakko Seikkula came to Havana once, and they were astonished to hear that it is possible to talk normally to psychiatric patients.
Well, that's a really interesting statement. There's another German psychiatrist who is exactly on the same page with you. His name is Johannes Thome, and I haven't seen him for a few years, but he was trained at Yale Medical School, and he immediately understood philosophical counseling when it emerged in New York in the 90s, and he was a friend of ours and a supporter.
Yeah.
He went back eventually to Rostock and became chair of the department there, and also head of they have an institution, attached to the department. It's a psychiatric institution where they do research and treatment. And he said to me several times that he wanted to get philosophers, or rather philosophical counselors, to go in and to formalize interactions with the patients. Fortunately, in my case, I don't speak German, so I was off the hook. But you would be ideal. Should I put him in touch with you?
And no, I'm now it is I have passed the time where I would do that. But I became very, yeah, I could say I became a friend of the lead of the chef, or what do you say, the lead, the chef of a big psychiatric clinic outside Berlin in Brandenburg, and he is now retired. I talked to him, in fact, today on telephone because I'm going to visit him in May when I go north. So we still have contact, and he was considering to engage philosophers in his clinic, and two people who I recommended visited him, but it was not possible to do it. You know, the administration is not very flexible. You know.
Yes, it would be really complex. So let me ask you one last question before we open the mic. When you go back to your cabin up north, in really in way north, so do you just enjoy nature? Do you meditate there? Do you write there? What do you do when you're in your leisure time up there in your cabin?
Yeah, no, yeah, of course I'm working there. I bring with me books. I have things to do, so it's very peaceful. So I can work there undisturbed. But at the same time, I love the nature. I know the fresh air, and it is wonderful to be there. And I can walk up on the hill, on the mountain. It is not very high, but you have a fantastic view on the Lofoten Islands and so on.
That's way north. You must have the northern lights also up there.
It is the midnight sun when I come up there. So it is the sun is shining all day and night. So yeah, and there is always something to do with on the cabin to repair things and to, yeah. So that's also a reason why I absolutely want to go there this summer.
Well, that's great. I think it's time to open the floor. If you're okay with that, let's see if anyone wants to put up their hand electronically. Ibrahim is quick on the draw, so I will turn it over. Professor Özdemir, do you know Anders? Ibrahim is a Turkish pioneer of philosophical counseling. He's studying in the US on kind of research program, but please go ahead, Ibrahim.
I am glad to hear to you because from you that my major is environmental philosophy and ethics, and I started my PhD on environmental philosophy because of Arne Næss' deep philosophy, deep ecology movement. You said Arne Næss. Yes, Arne Næss. You said Arne Næss. And he also was used to go to his cabin in summer. And when I visited Norway in 2009, I proposed to visit him, but unfortunately he was in his cabin. Then he passed away. But I translated some of his works into Turkish. So I always I talk about him in my classes on environmental philosophy because he also changed his perception of positivist philosophy after reading Spinoza. So Spinoza is that, Spinoza, as you said, it is very important for us to have a new and deeper perception of nature and also human psyche and ourselves. I'm glad to hear that. But I just want
again of your friend.
Sorry,
who passed away.
Arne Næss. When I was
Arne Næss. You met Arne Næss. Yeah. He was.
I was proposing to visit to visit him in 2009, but later because he was in his cabin in on the mountains, we couldn't make it.
Yes.
Yeah, but I just what is the parallel? He just changed our perception of environment, nature. And he just, because today many psychiatrists and the psychologists, they recommend to their clients to walk in the nature, to have a new perception of the nature. in your practice, what is, what do you think about the impact of nature on our well-being, for our spiritual and well-being? And the second question, I just started a workshop with the inmates in prison about mindfulness, but then when I work with them, I just discovered the impact of meditation on them. It is, they are, when I just met some of them, they are 30 years there, for 30 years there, for 40 years there. I was speechless. Then how to communicate with this man, how I can give some hope to them. Then with my philosophical background and philosophical constant practices I learned from Lou, I told them, just by meditation and by just in mindfulness, you can get off the prison. And it worked. Yeah. I just, want to hear from about that. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the questions. First to the nature question. I think that is a perspective that is from my start with Spinoza has been very important to me. To say that nature is not just something around us; it is something within us, and it is, so to speak, what the Greeks called arche. So it is a ground life within us, and that is, of course, also important perspective in meditation. As I mean, this when I said silence I regard as what Spinoza would call the natura naturans, not natura naturata, but this creative nature within us and within everything. So that is something very important. And what I'm writing now as a critique of modernity, I would say that this conception of natura naturans is missing too much in modern time. We think too mechanistic about the world and not really realize how fundamental nature in this inner meaning is. So I stop there. Then I go to the next point with prison. Tom Anderson, who I mentioned, who I collaborated with, his method of reflecting processes has also been practiced in prisons. And Tom Anderson had a connection to prisons, and he came to me after he had been traveling, visiting a prison in Sweden, for instance. He came into my office and told about that, and he one time he said a prisoner in this Swedish prison had said, when we talk this way we are doing in these reflecting processes, I can't commit my crime. But the way we were talking before, I could not commit my crime. And then he told his judge had written him a letter, because his judge had become doubt if he had judged the wrong person. And then this prisoner did answer the letter, and with admirable concern for his old judge, he did answer the letter and say, "No, you have judged the right guy." So he committed his crime. But something else, and I also did take part once in such reflecting processes in the prison in Norway, and I must say the prisoners were the most interesting people who talked there. But I could mention one thing else. I have a friend who I knew him for a long time. He was he was also the leader of the Norwegian Association for Philosophical Practice. And he became my doctoral student from one particular reason. he committed a murder and came into prison. And I was contacted by the prison, who said, we have a prisoner here. He want to take a PhD. And of course, I knew who it was because I knew him, and I have heard about that terrible thing that happened. So then I became a supervisor, and I visited the prison for many times, and he was able to write a fantastic PhD on prisons, and he was writing very much about what it means to be a prisoner. So he was writing out of his own experience of being a prisoner. So I allowed him to tell his story, you could say, in this PhD, and then reflect upon that, and also, of course, he had time to study as a prisoner for many years. I used to tell him, you have to regard yourself as a state scholar. So I think it was very important for him. He was writing a kind of what you call it, diary. So from day to day, his experience, and he did write very many pages, and he took out about 100 pages for the PhD. So it was, and he's now working. He's wonderful. He's very good at talking in television. He has been many times and so on, about his experiences of being a prisoner. And he has. I don't know if I can translate the title of his PhD. He called it inner and outer. That's no a word I can't translate. What do you do when you are a prisoner? It is a verb for it. You are. I don't get it.
This is an excellent example for me, because on the first day when they learned I am a professor at university, at college, they say, why you are here? I told them, I consider you as a students, just PhD students. It takes several years to get paid. I hope when you get out of here, you will be changed. This hope. With this hope, I am coming. I am teaching here, and I just saw, as you said, they were so happy. Then next time I went, they came with the notebooks.
Okay, change. I could use that word. You could say, when you are a prisoner, when you have committed a crime, you have been so unlucky to kill someone or something like that. You have many years in prison, and it is, and you expect, or the state expects, that you should change by that. But do you really change? I mean, that is a problem with the prisons. And my doctoral student, he did write about that. Prisons, it is not always very possible to change your attitude by being a prisoner. For young people, it is rather a kind of education in criminality. So that is a very critical view on what a prison is, and I remember he had a kind of experience in the prison he was. It was the guy who did lead that. It was for people who wanted to do it. It was, and then he had the opportunity to regret what he did, and to feel that what he really had been doing, and get a feeling of a kind of what is the word for it? For forgiveness, you could say.
Forgiveness, yeah.
Yeah, and I met him after that, and he was much more relaxed after that. So I was very happy to realize that, because I thought, now he is going to write a good thesis. He's not so much in fighting, that he is his sentence was too hard and all that. So it was yeah, good.
Could you write his name in the chat book? Then I can maybe contact him or ask for some. Maybe I can learn from his experience. I will appreciate that. Thank you. It was very good, information for me.
So then I write here in the kind of, where do I write this?
In the chat room, Anders, if you want to open the
I have
chat.
opened the chat room.
But you should, at the bottom, you have a place to type.
At the bottom it is.
Yes.
There it is. Then I write his name.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lud. It was a very good, yeah.
So shall I send it or?
Yes, you hit the arrow at the bottom right-hand corner.
Yes, I have.
It should. There you go.
Okay, yeah, we got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Good. Then I can go out of the chat room. Yeah. Well, it could be said much more on these things, but I'm glad I don't have to say too much, because then as I remember, as I was on an English course as a young man, 68, in southern England, at the King's School in Bournemouth, I had a teacher. He said once to me, you are good at expressing yourself with your very limited vocabulary. So, so I think that is somehow still the case. But my vocabulary is not that limited as it was in 68, but this is still too limited, I think.
Well, Rick is suggesting a couple of synonyms for forgiveness, maybe rehabilitation or maybe redemption.
Yeah, rehabilitation is such a word within the prisons, but rehabilitation it is an ideology in the prisons.
Yes, and we have a big problem here because of we have recidivism. That is, people fail to be rehabilitated in prison very often. They come out and then they reoffend and they go right back in again. So it's a revolving door.
Yeah.
Do you know that Barrientos? You know Jose Barrientos?
I know. He's in prisons in Mexico. Yes.
Yes, and Colombia.
In Mexico.
Yes,
in Colombia.
And Colombia. Yes. These are some tough prisons. I have a feeling that the prisons in Latin America are probably not quite as posh as the prisons in Scandinavia, for example.
I have a friend in Colombia who is a social psychiatrist at the Rosario University in Bogota, and I visited him and gave a lecture in Bogota a couple of years ago.
You did?
Yes.
Fantastic. It's a beautiful city, huh? Bogota.
Yeah, but it is very huge, but still too small for all the cars in the city.
Yes, it's also, I was there in 2000. It was very dangerous, very dangerous. There was the time when kidnapping, a lot of kidnapping.
I was taken care of as I was.
Yes, I was taken care of too.
To do anything
but they have huge book fairs. You know, they love books. The reading public, they love books, and they have fantastic book fairs. Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, beautiful, beautiful book fairs. Ibrahim, thank you so much for jumping in. It's great to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Anders.
See you, and we will keep in touch. There are a couple of more hands up, so I'm going to invite. Hang on a second, but before I do the wrong thing, I'm going to try to invite Regina. Your hand is up, so Regina, would you like to jump in and say hi? Nice to see you, Regina.
Hi. Thank you very much. Your background is very similar to mine in some ways. I've been into the state psychiatric hospital, and I've been into the prisons, youth prisons, actually. So, but I was there as a psychologist. Now I'm a philosophical counselor. My history is in philosophical midwifery. And when you mentioned just almost quickly the idea that you're going to be teaching on something about the self.
Yeah.
I remembered you saying that.
Yeah, this was in Vienna. Yeah.
Oh, and I thought, interesting, since that's very significant element in my own work. And so I'm going, what is your idea, or how would you talk about that idea in general, or specifically if you want?
Yeah, what I did talk about, I don't think I have very present everything I talked about, but I think I started with Paul Ricoeur and his book Oneself as Another, where he is doing the distinction between idem identity and ipse identity, where idem identity is, so to speak, where you really are, and ipse identity is a narrative identity that you tell through actions, through life, and you so to speak, you tell yourself and you tell others who you are by your actions and your engagement in the world and how you are thinking. And this idem identity is something mysterious. Who are we really? It is very hard to. But what I mainly did in this teaching there, I made the students tell about an episode in their own life that had been important for their identity and for their self-experience. And then everyone came up with something. Everyone remembered, oh, I remember that time with my grandfather. I remember that time with my brother I remember as my sister died. I remember as I was in love and my beloved left me, and so on and so on. They came up with a lot of and I really love to do that. But that was also what I did in Sweden, in Gothenburg, as I worked with artists. So they also did tell stories about their experiences of being artists, and that is a starting point to reflect on. What was that episode about? You still remember it was something in my life that was very important because I have not forgotten it. And then you get an opportunity to express it and to see yourself if your story is how you would like it to be. Also, does it be correct or not correct is not the best word, but and if you then you may have to tell it again in a little different way, and then you come up with a story that you can reflect on and ask yourself what's that really about, and that is a way to also raise the question, but who am I then in these experiences? So that's very short my approach.
Thank you very much, Regina. It's great.
Thank you. I like the last question.
Yeah.
The last question is good. Yes.
And we all enjoyed the answer too. It's a great answer. Thanks. Take care, Regina. We'll see you around. Okay. We have two more hands up. Alexander, you are next online, and then Jorn. So I'll ask you, Alexander, to unmute, and I'm going to get it right this week. You're in Belgrade, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So please go ahead, Alexander, and you're going to be spotlighted in a moment. And
Alexander in Belgrade, is that the guy I know? Oh no, he was something different.
Yeah, he was.
I know.
He's been around. I think we may have met Alexander in Romania.
Timisoara, yeah.
Timisoara, we met him.
Yes. First, thank you very much on this wonderful interview. My question is, could you please tell us some more about prospects and ways how philosophical counseling can contribute to treatment of psychosis? I ask this before because for so many years there was like psychosis was deemed as unapproachable domain for any kind of talking therapy. So this idea to use philosophical counseling in treatment of psychosis is very fascinating to me personally. So can you please tell us some more?
Yeah. I think I would like to tell something I realized as I came into this network, that I heard as I came into this network, that impressed me, you could say. Because in this psychosis network, it started in '96 in Falun, and there was a group of, it was 3 nurses and was 1 psychiatrist, and they were working fabulously with the first episodes psychosis. They were not philosophers, but they were open-minded, dialogically interested people, and they worked so, and everyone who became first episode, had the first episode psychosis, came to them, to this group, and they were able to bring them out of the psychosis. So that they, after some years, they did not have schizophrenia in that region. So the authorities in Stockholm became suspicious and went up there because it can't be the case. Why should they have less schizophrenia in the Falun area? But they were able to bring the people out of psychosis so early that they did not qualify for this diagnosis of schizophrenia. And I met a lady from Helsingborg, that is a city in Sweden, quite close to Denmark. And she said in the beginning it was so fantastic to work in this group, because everyone with first episode psychosis came to us, and it was so wonderful to talk to people and to see how they went out of the psychosis, and they came towards us, and quite many of them were able to take up life again, came out of this episode of psychosis that you could say you could regard not as an illness, above all not as a disease, but as a crisis, as a life crisis, and they could come out of that and take up their lives again. But then the medical doctor who was in charge and sent all patients to us, she moved from the place, and another person came in, and she thought we have to do it more professionally. So then these people came first into psychiatry and were diagnosed and all that, and then some came to this team working with first. And the lady I talked to said, then the whole mystery of what we were doing was away. It was not the same anymore. We did not have the same kind of research, because then people were into psychiatry and they had started, you could say, a psychiatric career, and when they came to us, they had to go to be brought out of that. And that was not the case in the beginning, because when they came to us in the beginning, they had not started a psychiatric career. They just came into a life crisis and came to reasonable people who could talk to them, and they could then find themselves. And they also, of course, they worked systemically, so they organized the network of the family and everyone, and they came back into reality and could get out of their psychotic crisis. So I really believe in that, and as a philosopher, I don't have much opportunity to talk to, but I would really love to do it if I could, because I remember Jaakko Seikula, first of all, he says one psychosis is not exactly like the other. Psychosis, you know, it is such a concept that you put onto a lot of things, and that is that reminds me of a word of Wittgenstein, when Wittgenstein talks about the bewitchment of the mind through the means of language. If you have a noun for something, you believe it must also be something in reality. And psychosis is it is not one thing, but it might have something in common, that you so to speak, you become so fascinated by your inner ideas or wishes or fears, or that you take refuge, so to speak, in this inner, and Jaakko Seikula points very hard on that it is the psychosis is a place where you take refuge. It is not a state of illness or madness or disease. It's a crisis where you need some place to hide inside yourself, to stand a terrible world, and then you need help to be able to stand this world again, find out how it goes, and that is something I find so terrible about psychiatry, that people are very much brought into circumstances that is very hard to get out of again. And also, I was advised by a PhD thesis in Gothenburg by a lady there who is working. She did found an institute for how people are able to bring out of medication. It has to go slowly, but it is possible to do. And her name is Karina Håkansson. He did write a PhD thesis for Seikula in Finland. And,
maybe you could put her name in the chat room as well. Could
yes. Share now chat. There it is. No, I think I know how to do it. So
there we go. Karina Håkansson. Thank you. Thank you very much.
2A is O in the
Håkan. Well, thank you for the lesson in Scandinavian languages, which is immensely difficult. Americans struggle. We struggle with English. But back to your answer to Alexander. Are you saying that they were able to use talk and human relations and not medication and not shock therapy and none of these?
Yeah, very, very much. So they did use very little medication. Sometimes they had to for a period, but they do it very little.
Yeah.
And in Tromsø, they now have in the psychiatry at Tromsø a department where they try to bring patients out of medication. And the one who did build it up was a student of Tom Anderson.
Well, you're sounding like Lodovico Settembrini in Thomas Mann's novel of The Magic Mountain, which I'm sure you can read in German. But Settembrini had this perspective also, that you could talk to people. They were hiding. They were withdrawing because they couldn't stand reality. And that's a parallel position. Very interesting. You know, the psychiatry today is going in the other direction. They call it molecular psychiatry. They're just using drugs. They don't even talk anymore to patients.
Yeah, they don't even talk. It's
terrible.
Yeah. Well, that means there's more room for philosophers. If no one's talking to them, then there are still many who could benefit from talk. There's no doubt. No doubt.
Of course.
So there's a challenge for you, Alexander, and the younger practitioners. So there's possibility there.
I can tell you a little funny story. a philosophical practitioner in Tromsø he came in my practice, and when I left Tromsø, he got all my guests. He took over all my guests. He's a very good practitioner. And he told me once, as he was young, he was working in the summertime. He was a student in the summertime in the psychiatric hospital. And he stood there and looked out of the window with a young guy on his side who was a patient. And then this young guy talked to him and said, "Tell me, are you educated, or are you just working here?" And then my friend said, no, I'm not. I am just working here in summertime. I am not educated. Oh, good. Then we can talk together.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. It's great to see you. Thanks for joining today.
You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Jorn, you've been very patient. Please unmute. Go ahead. You know each other, of course.
Actually not, unfortunately. Well, maybe Anders, as you can see, my first name is also Scandinavian, Jørn.
Yeah, Jørn.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it should be Jørn with the
The umlaut.
Jørn.
That was Jørn.
Yeah.
And I'm originally from Germany, grew up in Dortmund and studied in Göttingen before coming to University of California at Berkeley. So in a way, I'm still stuck here since 1978. One question for you. For me, philosophy is one way for self-transformation, similar to meditation, spiritual practice, and art. Speaking of the philosophical practice, I would like to know maybe what you think is the most important factor or consideration in philosophical practice. In other words, what is the most potent perspective or medium based on your experience?
Thank you for that question. That is really at the center of what occupies me. But of course, I have to think a little how to answer shortly on that question. But what is the most important, I think first of all, that you are able to take in the story of your guest. So I was a couple of years ago in Vienna and the Institute for Family Therapy. They were educating therapists, and I talked for 2 days. And then they wanted me to show how I do philosophical practice, and then I got the response that they were astonished that I focused on the story, not on the life situation of the person. So they said it was so astonishing how you went into the story, and I would not do that. I would ask myself, how can I help this lady I was talking to? And then I said, no, I'm a philosopher. I don't want to help people. I want to do things more complicated, that they have something to think about. But of course, that was a joke somehow, because. But then what I really meant is that to really go into the story of the people is helping enough. So the first step is to let the people realize I'm listening. And I used to say, when people realize you are listening, it opens up a space of attention where you feel invited in, and then you find words that you didn't maybe even not know that you had. And then you tell your story, and then it is possible together with the philosopher to investigate the space that occurs in this, the place that occurs in this space, and going into this place in the story, you will always meet life topics that are unavoidable, but we just try that. We try to avoid very often these life topics. And I think it's a challenge for the philosopher not to avoiding the topics that you just try to avoid. So that is very shortly, I have written about it in German. It is, you could say, I try to explain my method without having a method in that sense that I know exactly what to do. But when I think when I reflect on what I'm doing, I could say that's what it is about: listening, opening a space where a place of life can occur, to go into that, investigate what is it about, and to meet the topics of life that are always very interesting to meet, and to contribute to an understanding of these topics without thinking you have a theory to fix lives. I don't think I have that. I am no fixer of things. So was that an answer somehow?
Can you say it again? What
Was that an
That was
answer?
an answer to your question.
Was it an answer, Jorn?
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's more than an answer. I think you've touched the heart of something, Anders, something very central to what you do. Is you're not a fixer, but you're creating a space where someone can be understood, which is a big problem that people have. Yes, is alienation and isolation. They don't feel understood. They may be diagnosed or medicated or fixed, but they're not understood.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you're doing.
Someone always think they know better what you need.
Yeah.
They know how to fix you. Or they try to find out how to fix you.
Yeah.
And I try to understand the story. I try to go into that and to make it live, so to speak.
Okay, and well, thank you, Jorn. That was a great question. That's really really brought something wonderful out of our guests. And notice again, everyone who is American and Canadian, we tend to call our guests clients to make it more professional and less personal. But in Scandinavian and Germany, you're usually calling them guests, and this is maybe also
I do that. Not everyone, but
not everyone.
Quite many have taken it up. I call them guests. I think Achenbach also called them guests.
Yes, that's our experience. Yeah, guests. Right. Michelle has put something in the chat room that you might want to read about a Dr. Stephen Hayes, developer of acceptance and commitment therapy, working with patients who experience psychosis. Also, thank you, Michelle, for putting that in the room. Okay, Jorn, that's great. I hope you're well, and we'll be in touch. Okay, take care of yourself. Thank you for chiming in.
Yes,
it's always good to see you. And now we have another question from. Let's see. I know there's Karen. Karen is with us. Okay, Karen, please go ahead. Hi.
Okay, like a German name.
I'm wondering if you could say a little bit in comment in response to this thought I've had about the supposed distinction between the past and the future. So there's therapist, and some people say therapists or counselors deal with your past. Tell me about your past. And then in America, there's something called life coaches. They help you with your future. And as a philosopher, I say hogwash. if you deal with either of those two things only, you're in a big mess. You got to deal with both. And like you were saying, I certainly appreciate life being a story, that your past is part of who you are. It's always going to be part of who you are. And maybe not the biggest part. The future, I'd like to say, is the greatest part of who we are. But our past will always be part of that. And I'm wondering what you would say in response to that future past supposed dichotomy.
I would like to do it, but now I had to niece, and maybe it comes the second time. That's very often the case. But yeah, it's a good. I know that distinctions. You say some therapists are occupied with the past, and others are occupied. You mentioned coaches, but also behavior therapists also are more occupied with the future. Not only, but I could say what I do is first not. It is first the moment of the meeting. Also to listen to the story and to become an impression of the expression. So I think when you to open this space of attention, you have to dare to take in an expression and receive a bodily rooted impression of that expression. And that is happening now, not in the past and not in the future. And that is the starting point that you have to go into. And then you can, when you start to explore the place opening up in this space of attention, you can go both ways. You can go to the past and go to the future and consider how will it be and how was it and so on. So I developed what I call the threefold hermeneutics of understanding human life. You have a archaeological hermeneutics and a teleological hermeneutics. But then you have in between the moment, and I did call that an eschatological hermeneutics. So I mean, what is at stake? What is here and now? The dialogue about what is important to meet now, and then you can have your thoughts about the grounds in your life, the archaeology, so to speak, or the archae, and the goals in life, the telos. And of course, I cannot start a lesson about that now, but that was a perspective.
Yeah, being in the present is certainly obviously very, very important. And I personally have, I don't know, learned just by paying attention, like you really have to do that. Living in the moment is, I don't know. I'm not sure if I have the fancy formula on how to do it, but somehow intuitively, I think I've got it. I get it. The idea of, yeah, you're, I don't know. I'm not saying this well at all, but yeah, the present, meeting somebody and having a conversation with them and looking at them and looking at them in the eyes and all of that. Exactly. Yes.
It's the now.
The expression.
It's the now, Karen, that gives the refuge from the past and the future. The now is the safe place and the reflective space. That's really brilliant, Anders. This three-part, suddenly now you're giving us in your third language something really interesting to think about, which is the archaeological, the teleological, and the eschatological. That is, could we get that translated into English? Have you published this in German or in Norwegian?
I have written a little in German, but it is not translated.
I think it should be. I think it would be a great benefit for us to be able to read.
Yeah, I would really like. Also, I have a book in German on philosophical practice with my my lectures, but and I've asked the publishers, but they don't. They have the idea it should be not lectures or essays. It should be a monograph. What do you say? But I say, but this lecture I'm giving and essays I have been writing and they are developing the topic from chapter to chapter, so to speak. So there is an interconnection between these, and it is more fascinating to read very often than to read a book that with that don't have this dynamic of essays. It is an essayistic.
Yeah.
So if you know someone who would like to translate it from German into English, I would be happy for that.
Well, that's a project. Don't look at me, but maybe we can help because I think your contributions are really important and would be beneficial to the English readership. So let's see if we can work on that. You know, Michael Picard is working on Achenbach, and we'll keep in touch about this. Okay, I think it's really worthwhile. Okay. Karen, thank you. Your questions are really helpful. We're getting Anders now to reveal a lot more, which is fascinating. So thanks, Karen, for joining and for asking. Rick, you're going to get the last word because it's 5:31 and Anders is getting pretty late now in Munich, so we don't want to keep you up all night. But Rick, we'll give you the last question.
Go to bed.
Yes, well, okay. If you don't mind, we'll give Rick the floor and you can have the last question. Rick, please go ahead.
You already mentioned Michael Picard. Yeah, the book that he just translated from Achenbach is already in print. It just came out. That's number one.
It has come in English now.
You might get
Picard.
Yeah, Picard. Maybe he'll do that for you. It's a big project, though. But
I will meet him, I think, later this summer.
To speak a little more about meditation, because as Lou mentioned, this is a great interest of mine. I've been practicing for over 50 years also. I've published a lot about meditation and philosophy and how they are similar but different and all of that. So I would imagine, and you said this already, that it plays a role in your philosophical development, but it's not so obvious what that is. Could you just speak to your own personal understanding of how these two things might influence each other, philosophy and meditation, and maybe even also philosophical counseling?
Yeah. When I meet people in my practice, they are coming because of some concerns, and these concerns are mostly emotional. Also, they are emotional, and also it's a topic in them. It is about something they are concerned about, but it is also very emotional, and there are also anxieties in it, and mourning. Maybe they have lost something in their life. They have feelings of being guilty of something, and shame. Shame is a big topic in life, and I think what meditation has learned me, has teach me, you could say, this experience of meditation, is that I am convinced that in the midst of the storm of problems and emotions in life, there is a silence that is more important than the turbulences around. And I think I try to personalize that silence within in the midst of the storm. And it is not something I teach. It is not so that I try to convince people that life is meaningful or something like that. I'm not doing logotherapy in that way, but I try to represent in my person this basic conviction, or that I'm convinced. So that's why I said this, that the space opening up in my practice is a safe place. You can go in there. It is a free space where it is possible to go in without having the fear of being looked negatively on, or to. Of course, it may also happen that people brings up things that I cannot agree with, or something like that, and then I normally say it. I'm not a guy who only thinks that I'm working with the emotions of people. I'm trying to understand their story. I'm trying to understand their life topics, and also to take part in the emotions of things. But I think this being convinced that there is, in the midst of the storm, there is a silent place where it is safe to be, and that is the fundamental of life, and maybe also the area of living that expands above the limits of life and death, or the limits of life into death. So this is something important to me, but it's very seldom that I say it in this way. But when you ask so directly, I have tried.
Yeah, a quote comes to my mind. It was some yogi, I forget who said something, or a saint, Indian saint, maybe, I forget who, but somebody in the meditation world, maybe 100 years ago, Ramana Maharshi or Ramakrishna, one of these people, said something like, I'm not going to paraphrase this well, but something like, he who is not still cannot impart stillness to others, right? So abstractly, that space that you access in meditation helps you create the container that you work with your clients in. I would put that lens on my way of trying to summarize what you said. It's who you are, who you've become through your practice, that you make this available within the space that you create with your clients. Yeah?
Mm. Okay, yeah.
I
could just mention that as I was in Norway in February, I gave a lecture with the title Ethics of Sentiment by Jesus from Nazareth and Immanuel Kant.
What a great title.
I'm still working on that.
Aren't we all? It sounds like the eye of the hurricane, to put it in a different metaphor. It's that
in
the middle of
the eye of the hurricane.
Yes, the eye of the hurricane. Thanks, Rick. I was wondering what you were going to come up with, and that's terrific. Thank you very much. There is one more question in the chat room. If we can ask Anders to answer one more, maybe it's a quick question. It's from our other Karen, who says, your emphasis on allowing the other to tell their story reminds me of Yalom, Urban Yalom, existential practice. Do you have an appreciation of his works, Anders? Have you encountered his...
Yeah, I know that, of course, because as I studied philosophy in Norway, I had to have two what do you call it, two disciplines. So I had a 1-year study of psychology, and I had also a study of mathematics. So I have mathematics in my background, but I could teach at the high school on mathematics, and I also had psychology. And in psychology, of course, I learned about Jalom and Rogers and these people. So I am sympathetic to that, but I feel that it is to me a little too much technique. I don't. It is. Maybe I shouldn't say that because it's not well founded when I say it. It's just a feeling I have. So I am sympathetic to that, but it's not so important to me. In fact, I think because of this feeling, it is to me also that it is the way you are being. So the way of being is important. But of course, it is a better kind of psychotherapy or psychology, I would say. This humanistic approach of Yalom and Rogers and Maslow and so on.
Yes,
Yes,
it is.
I appreciate your answer, and I thank you so much for that. Yeah, the technique is potentially problematic. So I understand even what Rick was saying about the stillness and being present, and I write about nurses and their opportunity to be at existential moments of their clients, which is their patients, and it's very pragmatic. It's very real. It's very compassionate. It's very empathetic. And I think I see a lot of that in your practice and your humility and your sincerity. So thank you for all of that today.
Thank you very much, Karen. It's great to see you again. I joked with Yalom, I know him and we know each other, and I've joked with him that he's very big on interpretation of dreams, for example, And I joked with him that if you read Love's Executioner, you discover that his guests or his patients they feel better when he gets over his countertransference with them, not because of his interpretations, but when he's accepting of them, then they suddenly have a healing experience. So maybe he's moving toward you, Anders. Maybe that's the direction that he's moving.
Yeah.
Anders, we're going to wrap it up. It's been really great. In fact, we started off in a nice, steady, even pace, but we've gotten to some really interesting areas with these questions and answers, and this has been a very valuable time. So thank you so much on behalf of everyone for spending the time.
Thank you also. I was quite curious how this would work, but I'm very happy now that good questions and the possibility to say something that I'm happy at.
Yes, well, we're going to stay happy. We'll quit while we're ahead. You're happy that we can stop. But it's been really valuable. We will produce this and get it up on YouTube eventually, not too long from now, and then others will be able to benefit. Okay, so it's great to see you. Thank you so much for joining, everybody. Thank you for your cooperation and your participation. It's been a wonderful afternoon with you. I wish you a very good evening in Munich, and we'll get together again, I hope, before long. In reality.
Thank you. I think we will meet again maybe in Zagreb.
Yes, we'll meet in Zagreb next summer, if not sooner. So be well, Anders, and it's great to catch up with you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.